In today's world, people are more disconnected than ever. Anxiety, loneliness, and depression are rampant, and young people are desperate for meaningful relationships. From the beginning, Edge has created opportunities for people to develop in their personal, professional, and spiritual lives.
My relationship with my mentor is awesome. Shout out to Jason. He's there for me in terms of any questions I have, both professionally and personally. Earlier this year, my dad had COVID, and he was one of the first people to check in with me regarding that. So it's nice to know that he cares about me as a whole human being.
Edge continues to provide ways for you to develop as a whole person, to grow yourself, and to find your role in your community and make an impact. Edge offers a variety of programs and events to provide community and safe spaces for whole person development to occur. Edge Groups, Edge Work, and Edge Events are our current product offerings, but we are always looking to expand as a way to better serve our community and to be able to positively impact more lives. We believe that people grow better together. We are all made for community. Once you have expressed interest in participating in an Edge group, we will pair you with 5 to 7 other young professionals and a carefully selected Edge-trained mentor. And together, you will navigate life, including personal growth, career development, and faith. Edge group participants commit to a 1-hour virtual gathering with their group every other week for 1 year. And because Edge Groups is a virtual program, you can experience the power of intergenerational mentoring from anywhere.
I'm Toni McEwen. I work for Corteva AgriScience, and I lead our global HR service centers. I do think I have the best Edge group because these women are constantly showing up for one another. So while I'm technically the mentor, there's a lot of moments where I sit back and I don't say a lot, and they just speak into each other's lives.
Edge at Work is a 1-year cohort-based program that focuses strictly on personal and professional development. Leveraging a curriculum that we co-created with Butler University, emerging leaders are provided a safe space to focus on their own personal and professional development. We focus on everything from mental wellness to overcoming failure and self-limiting behaviors to receiving feedback and managing change. Edge Events is where our entire community comes together. Events are the glue that bring folks from all of our programs together to share life, learn from each other, and address relevant topics within our lives and communities.
I struggled in my early 20s with figuring out you have to take ownership of your career and choices. And I think Edge really helped me gain clarity to make those choices.
I wanted to get involved because I frankly wish I would have had something like this 20 years ago when I started my career.
If you are a young person who is looking for deeper connection and community, Edge is for you. For those more seasoned, we are always in need of strong mentors. Your life experiences should be shared with others. If you are a business owner or executive and would like to provide a unique opportunity to your employees, Edge at Work would aid in their own personal and professional development journeys. Learn more about how we can partner with you at edgementoring.org. Our first speaker today is Brett Hagler. Brett has been recognized on Forbes 30 Under 30 list and named one of the top 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs by Goldman Sachs. Brett co-founded New Story, a company that has been named one of Fast Company's most innovative companies in the world. His company has built over 3,000 homes for 15,000 people and broke ground on the world's first 3D printed community in Mexico. Brett has big dreams and big goals. I think you'll be inspired by Brett and his approach to entrepreneurship and charity.
Hello everyone, I am excited to be with you all. It's a little weird for me doing this virtually. It's my first keynote where I'm not in person, but I'm honored to be part of such an extraordinary conference and the community that Edge represents. So I'm gonna dive right in with actually a personal story that happened to me recently and inspired this talk that I'm gonna give today. So a few weeks ago, I was sharing some of my personal story with a new friend. I was sharing how I had cancer at age 18. I shared about my startup failures. I shared about being rejected from my dream job. And then I shared some of the good that's happened in my life the last 5 years. And he smiled at me and he said, "Brett, not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path. Not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path. And I want to talk to y'all about encountering storms in pursuit of your dreams. I understand that the Edge mentoring audience is mostly a millennial workforce, and I believe this pandemic right now that you're in can create extraordinary opportunity for you professionally, depending on how you respond to all this stuff that's going on. So to start, I want to give you just a little context on who I am personally and where I come from so that you can better relate to what I'm going to share later. And we're going to use news story as the entrepreneurial example that shows what's happened after the storms and some of the successes. But the most important part of this talk will come when I tell you about the storms and the adversities that I went through that cleared the path for what I do now. All right, so some background on me. Growing up, starting an organization like News Story was about the last thing I thought I would do. I was fortunate to have amazing parents that instilled great values in me, but the idea of putting others first, or I don't know, this whole faith thing that I heard about, it wasn't really for me. I thought that stuff was boring, it was not adventurous, it had way too many rules, it was definitely weird, and I just thought I would totally miss out on the joy and the fun in life if I had a bigger purpose than living for me. And I thought I had a pretty good trick. I was like, yeah, I know this bigger purpose and God stuff is probably important in the grand scheme of things. So I'll just punt it and figure it out when I'm like 50 or 70, because living my life for something bigger than me couldn't possibly be better than living my way. With that worldview, throughout high school, college, and sometime as a young professional, for the most part, I just lived a pretty self-consuming lifestyle. I directed my abilities and my ambition all for my own gain or status, which turns out, when it's all about you, it's just unfulfilling. And so there I was in my early 20s. I wasn't really rock bottom. I wasn't like super depressed. I was just confused and lacking clarity, which you could say was a stormy season, because I knew there had to be a bigger purpose. And I started longing for just a more meaningful life. Now, people get to a bigger purpose in all different ways, but for me, it was through a revived Christian faith that just changed my life. It transformed my heart. It gave me a whole new direction for how I would live with my time on earth. And that change was actually sparked by a mentor relationship, which is why I'm super passionate about Edge and your community and the power of a mentor-mentee relationship. So with that new purpose and vision, I made a total 180 in my early 20s, and I started to go down a different path. That change led me on a trip to Haiti a couple years after the 2010 earthquake, where I met families that were living in tarp tents because their homes were destroyed from the earthquake, and they were living without life's most basic human needs: shelter and safety. And I got to see it firsthand. I got to smell it. I got to feel what it was like. I got to hear stories of mothers and fathers talking about how when they go to sleep at night, there's no protection from storms, intruders, animals creeping in. When it rained at night, they would tell stories of how the sewage or mud would rush through the dirt floors, and the kids would usually have to sleep on the floor. So that meant they would have to stand up during the night whenever it would rain. And I just didn't know this existed in the world. And it hit me so hard. And unfortunately, it's not just in Haiti. This is a global problem. I would argue one of the world's biggest problems, where over 1 billion people do not have adequate shelter. And in the year 2020, we just believe that's unacceptable. So about a year after that trip, I ended up starting News Story at age 25. I was about as inexperienced and unqualified as I got, but I had a vision and a passion to do things differently. And I had a dream of what it could be. And I didn't let all the details of starting or figuring out how to scale something paralyze me from not starting at all. I started small. I literally tried to fund one house with my co-founders, because that one house there was no excuses. It was just about our ability to be resourceful and creative and try to prove this was possible, and we could control that, right? We couldn't yet control how do you scale this to thousands and thousands of families and work with governments and all these things that can come later. It was just how do we do one house? And we have a mantra at News Story to dream big, but to start small. And so what do we actually do at News Story? Our mission is to pioneer solutions to end global homelessness. Basically, we address problems with innovative ways and we try to refresh the more old school methods in our industry. And to give you some context on what's happened since starting small with that first house, very unqualified, about as inexperienced as it gets, this is some of the successes that have happened that I want to share with you. And then I want to talk about the storms that cleared the way. So the first thing is that we got into a program in Silicon Valley called Y Combinator, which I think some of you are familiar with. It's really regarded as the world's top startup accelerator. After we got in there, we got off to a very fast start. The short version is that we went from $0 to over $60 million raised in our first 5 years. We went from one house to over 3,000 homes, building about 30 different communities across Haiti, El Salvador, Bolivia, and Mexico. These communities are amazing. They're beautiful. You walk into a community and sometimes there's hundreds of homes with thousands of people. Usually there's a school, a library, a soccer field, sometimes a church. It's a holistic community. And then we wanted to take a more riskier bet. We wanted to try to bring new innovation into these communities where it's needed most. And we started 3D printing houses. Yes, you heard that right. Last year in 2019, we began creating the world's first 3D printed community of homes with our partner Icon. We have successfully printed those houses down in Mexico. There's actually a documentary out right now on Apple TV Plus that documents that whole journey from going from idea to creating 3D printed homes that real families will live in. We've been named by Fast Company as one of the most innovative organizations in the world for 3 years. So I tell you those things because it has been a good start. And that has been years 25 to year 30 for me. What God's enabled and what our team has accomplished has definitely surpassed my wildest dreams. But what happened in the first half of the decade? What were the storms that cleared the path for all of those things you just heard that, yes, sound good and successful? That's what I want to talk to you about. And I want to rewind and now share those storms that in the season when they were happening felt like they were totally disrupting my life. But what they were actually doing were clearing the path to where I am today. So the first storm, this is a little more on the personal side, not professional. It was cancer at age 18. It came out of nowhere. I didn't want it. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But after I got better, it started to clear a path for the foundation of the most important thing in my life, my faith. It grew my family closer. It helped my parents' marriage significantly. It started to clear the path for me of just more gratitude and more grit that I now have as an entrepreneur. The second storm came right after a high point that I had, which was this new faith and purpose. But obviously, just because that part of your life is going well does not mean that everything else is going to go according to your plan or your timeline. So for this one, it was before News Story, and I had started a venture-backed e-commerce startup. I was young, I was 22, 23, right out of college. And the site was essentially a place where customers could come, and when they would buy something, we would give a percent of that purchase to a charity. One of the charities we decided to work with was actually based in Haiti, which is how I ended up taking a trip to Haiti that catalyzed News Story, but that's for later. And after about a year of this first startup, things just weren't going well. The startup didn't end up doing anywhere close to what we dreamed of, and we had to shut it down. And I remember thinking when we were shutting it down that, man, I thought this is what I was supposed to do. I thought, God had sent me this new plan after my faith. It even had a social impact component to it. And when it failed, it just felt like a storm came in and was just disrupting my plans, disrupting my life. But as I look back, this thing really helped clear the path for what I do today. Without the first startup, I would have never visited Haiti, which very likely would have never catalyzed News Story. I would not have met the first funders that have now become board members and dear friends of News Story that got us off the ground. I would have never met a role model of mine that really helped inspire me to start News Story. And I would have, I learned more in that 1 year with the failed startup than I maybe would have learned in a whole decade working a normal job somewhere. And the last storm I want to tell you about actually came right after that failed startup. So it was like back-to-back storms. Now I thought the failed startup didn't work because it was going to bring purpose and meaning to what I was hoping to do next, which was this. So during the first startup, we began partnering with a world-class organization that we were donating some of our profits to. And I just had the utmost respect for their founder, their founding team. Their founder was like a role model to me as a young social entrepreneur. And through that partnership, we started to develop a friendship, nothing super close, but definitely a relationship. And after the startup failed, I ended up meeting this gentleman at an event in Atlanta. And when we caught up there, I told him that we had shut down the startup and I was starting to look for new opportunities. Turns out he suggested maybe we explore what it could look like to work with him and work with their team. And I vividly remember being so excited that I could barely sleep that night. I thought, the dots are now making sense. That startup failed because I met this group, and now I could potentially work directly for one of my role models, learn just an insane amount, and then be able to take what I learned to potentially start my own organization one day. I thought this literally could not be a better setup for where I was in my life. And I was about 99% convinced I had the job. Then the storm came. I got an email saying no, essentially saying that I was too inexperienced, which was probably true in hindsight, and I may have made the same hiring decision. But when I got that email, with all the hopes that I had of what could be and how I thought it all lined up to a yes, I was gutted and I was so confused. I felt like it was a storm with zero clarity. Then something came over me that I don't think I'll ever forget. And what I did next, I think, is the right posture to take when you feel like a storm is disrupting your life. So right after I got that email, I got up from my computer and I just got down on my knees and I just said a simple prayer. And I just said, I have no clue how or why this is happening. It makes no sense. It sucks, but I'm going to keep going. And I'm just going to trust that something bigger and potentially better is going to come. I have no clue what it is, but I'm just going to trust that you will make my path clear. That was my prayer. I could not have imagined that 4 months after that, I had the vision to start News Story. That, in my opinion, would have never happened without those last two storms that I told you. Maybe God wanted to see how I responded to the storm. I don't know. I don't know why. But I do know that it cleared the path for what I was made to do. Not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path. And by the way, the leader I was referencing is Scott Harrison, who's the CEO of Charity Water, who is now a close friend, a mentor, an advisor to News Story. And his wife, Vic, is also a close friend and serves on our formal board of directors. And so both Scott and Vic and Charity Water have become incredible friends to our organization. And it's just a really beautiful story of how that all worked out, where in the moment, I would have never imagined here we'd be about 5 years later. If you know about Scott and Vic and Charity Water, then I'm sure this is potentially all clicking of News Story and what we've been inspired by. And if not, they're one of the best organizations on the planet, and you need to go check out their website. So I shared these examples of storms or adversities because especially as a younger millennial workforce, I want to encourage you that when you hear people talk about adversity can make you better, it's not just a cliche. It's as real as it gets. And if you're an ambitious person going after some kind of dream, there's no way around going through storms professionally. It's all your choice of how you respond to the storm. So when you make a courageous choice, which to me means choosing the hard thing over the easy thing, it's going to lead you into storms. Put another way, you will voluntarily choose to leave the comfort of a sunny place that you know what to expect every day with no risk. And you're putting yourself in areas where storms could happen. When I diagnose the failures or the adversities that made me better, those stories I just told you about, look, I could have very easily not put myself in those positions to fail, not put myself in those storms. I could have not been that vulnerable. I could have taken a more normal, safer path that kept me away from some of those professional storms. There's thoughts that go through all of our minds. Things like, maybe I won't go for that job because there's only a 5% chance I get it. And if I put myself out there, if I make myself vulnerable and they turn me down, that's going to disrupt things, right? Or maybe I won't leave my nice, comfortable job for something I love or I'm really passionate about because it's a lower salary in the short term. Though that list could go on, but we all know what those voices sound like. But if you guard yourself from never getting into adversity, failure, or rejection, you could have a safe, predictable path, but you will not grow. And in my opinion, it's very hard to actualize your potential and your passion that God put in your heart. So when you zoom out and you think big picture, I believe the real risk is playing it too safe and not getting into any storms. So to wrap, I want to read one of my favorite quotes that aligns with how we can all respond to the storms, and it has to do with our attitudes. So I'm going to read this by a gentleman named Charles Swindoll. He says, "The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. Attitude is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a team, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. When the storm happens, whether it's something that happened naturally that maybe wasn't your doing, could be a health issue like I had, it could be maybe you get laid off unexpectedly. Like there's a lot of things that happen that we don't put ourselves into. Or it could be a storm from a courageous professional choice that you've made. It's all about the attitude you respond with. We are in charge of our attitudes. And I just want to encourage you, especially as a younger professional, I promise this can be one of your strongest assets and one of your greatest strengths if you truly adopt that mindset. Since it is our choice, if you don't respond with the right attitude, then to me, it's not likely that when that storm comes and disrupts your life, it's going to clear your path. It probably won't clear the path that you're looking for if you don't respond favorably. But if you do respond with a growth-oriented, courageous attitude, you are putting yourself in the position to get out of that storm for a clearer path towards your dream, where you can look back and then know that you can only connect the dots as you look back, not when it's happening. And the best part, my friends, is that how you respond to that is 100% your choice. All right, that ends my talk. Thanks for listening. If you ever want to connect with me or News Story or our new venture fund we're starting called Home Team Ventures, reach out on Twitter or on Instagram, and we'd love to connect with you. All right, thank you guys. All my best.